Next up is Jeremiah Owyang, who has worked and did a lot of research with his team on the collaborative economy and especially how corporations are impacted and what opportunities for them. Jeremiah? Welcome, Jeremiah.
LeWeb, it's so great to be back. I don't know, I've been to like 5 LeWebs. I don't know, it's been so many.
You know, and I'm always looking forward to having you again. And I know you're working harder and harder each time to keep this research just for LeWeb.
That's right, and I wanted to thank you. You were the inspiration. We had dinner, in Q4 last year, and you said the next thing is taking a look at the sharing economy. So you were the inspiration for this research project. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having a very deep look at it and seeing how corporations are impacted. The stage is yours, Jeremiah.
Thank you so much. Now, while we're getting settled, Altimeter published a research report which is arriving in your lap if you're sitting here in the audience. For those that are online or watching this pre-recorded, you can find this also on my Twitter account, Owyang, and we'll be promoting that. Thank you so much for having me. Meet Frederick VII. I got to learn about Frederick last month when I visited Denmark. Frederick was one of the great kings and monarchs of Denmark, and he had a very interesting situation on his hands. All across Europe, there were revolutions happening, and lots of kings were losing their heads. Frederick VII saw that this quiet revolution was approaching his palace, and he had only one of 2 options. The first one is to fight the revolution and potentially lose his head, or 2, collaborate with them. I'll tell you what happened to Frederick VII in just a few minutes, but I want to talk about the revolution that's here today in this room. We've heard from a number of startups how they're enabling sharing to work with people. And the question we wanted to pose in our research is, what role do corporations have if people don't need them or want them? And I'm pleased to present for the very first time, we found an opportunity, a new market opportunity, and we call this a new economic model where ownership and access is shared. And this is for the startups in the room, the people that are sharing, and the corporations. Now, the interesting thing about this study is the only way for corporations to play into this space is they have to let go in order to gain more. And that's a big leap of faith for many companies to do, but it's the only way. So let's talk about the revolution. Sharing. It's not new, but it's happening today with greater velocity and speed than ever before. Let's imagine we're going to go on a business trip. And together, we're going to head off to a destination together. But rather than use a taxi company, instead, we could use a neighborhood person who's going to drive us using tools like Lyft, bypassing the taxi companies. When we get to our location, we can avoid hotels like Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, and instead stay at somebody else's home using tools like Airbnb or One Fine Stay. As our company grows, we don't need to go to a bank like HSBC or Bank of America. Instead, we can get funding from people around us using peer lending like Lending Club or Prosper. As we continue to grow, we don't need to use traditional staffing agencies or consulting firms. We can tap into Odesk or TaskRabbit and tap into a crowd that's ready to go at any given time. And last example is, as we're growing, we need a new office, but we don't need to use a traditional real estate or a real estate broker. Instead, we can tap into other companies that have excess inventory and use their offices, websites like Liquid Space and Pivot Desk, and share this. Now, what does this mean? It means there is a disruption happening to companies. Make no doubt about it. But how severe is it? Well, this study from UC Berkeley found out that the average car that is properly shared reduces the need for 9 cars. Let's do some simple math. Forbes magazine says that the average car is worth $30,000 US. So that's a $270,000 opportunity loss to a car manufacturer. But there's more than that. There's car loans, which could be $40,000 to $50,000. And don't forget insurance, gas, bridge tolls, private roads, parking, taxes. One could make the argument that one properly shared car changes over $1 million of ecosystem impact. Now that's one car. What about 100 cars or 100,000? What about 100 million cars that are shared? Now think about all those other verticals that I talked about in examples. This is absolutely a disruption to business. The next question we posed in our research as we interviewed the experts in this room and we segmented over 200 startups to take a look at how they behaved, is this a long-term trend or is it a fad that's going to go away? And there's many different instances of these factors, but we boiled it down to 3 major themes. And you will hear each of these today. Loic kicked it off with some of these pieces. The first one is societal factors. The second one is economic factors. And the third one is technology factors. Let's take a closer look. The first one, societal factors. This stat comes from Neil Gorenflo at Shareable Magazine. And he shared with me that 75% of consumers that they polled said that they want to see they expect an increase of sharing their objects and spaces over the next 5 years. It's more than that. It's not just the youth movement or the first generation to hit the internet that's connected, or the focus on sustainability, or that we're all starting to be living closer to each other in cities. There's a number of factors, but society is changing, and we're starting to amplify with scale and velocity the desire to share. The second one is the economic factors. And that little blip that you saw represents the number of people on this planet during my stay here. When I was born, there was approximately 4 billion. When I'm an old man, there could be over 9 billion people on this planet, roughly doubling. It means that Earth's population is continuing to rise, but our resources maintain pretty much a constant level. And it means that people want to do more with the products that they buy, and they want to buy products that are going to last for the long term. So it means that products that can be sold, resold, reused, reshared are going to matter a lot more. Now, the third factor is the technology factors that are driving this forward. Just some stats to share. Did you know there are 87 phones per 100 people on this planet? And the second thing is around 3/4 of the sharing startups that we looked at had enabled social networking capabilities, whether they had profiles or reputation systems, and about 53% actually already had Facebook Connect plugged in, and that number is only going to increase. What it means is that this revolution is already pinned on top of an existing movement, and that's called the internet. Lastly, we looked at the funding. We pulled apart 200 startups in the space, and I found that 37% of them had been funded. Of those who've been funded, the average was a whopping $28 million of funding. That doesn't even include even last week's Lyft, 60 million. Airbnb is over 120, Uber's over 50. So there are definitely some spikes. But when you look at those 200 startups, the total funding amount from the VCs was over $2 billion. And we're really just at the start of this movement. It means that this movement is not going away. The startups that have been funded are likely going to sustain, and it's only going to increase in speed. So what do you do if you're being disrupted? And it's only going to be a movement that's going to stand here. And we have to go back into history and try to understand what happened with Frederick VII. Now, King Fred, he saw that the revolution was coming to his gates. And he had one option, which is to fight them, potentially lose his head, or 2, collaborate with them. And he did the second, collaborate. In fact, he went in front of his gates, and he helped to ratify the government and made it a representative democracy. He created a new constitution. He gave the people what he wanted, and he tried to make it happen in his own terms. This same lesson needs to be applied to us. And I'm very excited to share in public for the first time a new economic model for people, the startups that are here, and corporations. And we call this the collaborative economy value chain. Now I'm going to walk everybody through it, and it requires us to look at our products, our services, and our marketplaces and connect them. As we move around, it gets more complicated. The first level is taking products and turning them into services. The second one, which we'll explore, is taking services and turning them into marketplaces. And the third model is activating your marketplaces to create your products. Let's go through the first one. Products to services. We call this company as a service. And instead of selling products, you now need to rent them or let customers subscribe to them or even gift them. Remember our example around Lyft? It's starting to disrupt taxi companies and even the desire to purchase cars. Some of the forerunners in this space is Toyota and BMW. In fact, in their San Francisco dealerships where they sell cars, they now enable you to rent cars off their lot. And it's a brand new model that we're starting to see already. Subscription isn't anything new. We've seen this with Netflix and companies like Salesforce, software as a service. But now we need to apply it to all durable goods and even potentially services. The opportunity is we have a long-term relationship with customers who are subscribed, not just quick sales. Tap into company as a service and allow your products to be subscribed and rented on demand. I met with BMW at Stanford, and they discussed on stage how in 2050, cars will be at a fully saturated space inside of cities. We can't fit any more cars until I guess they start flying. So they know that this model is going to matter to them. The second model, we call this motivate a marketplace. And this is where you take your services, if you offer services, and you turn it into a marketplace. And we call this motivate because you can't manage, you can't own, and you can't run this marketplace. Corporations, you can only motivate and encourage them because they're already doing this on two-sided marketplaces, like Airbnb, where there's buyers and sellers. So what's the opportunity? We see a new market opportunity, and nobody's doing this yet. Marriott, instead of being disrupted by Airbnb, has the opportunity to certify my guest room or my guest house and bring me trusted customers from their loyalty program. The currency of this economy is trust, and tap into existing distribution networks. And it means that I get trusted folks from Marriott's loyalty program, the guest gets a localized experience in Silicon Valley, and Marriott gets a cut of the revenues, and you can even send in their maid team or their concierge service, getting new revenues out of this marketplace. Corporations need not be disrupted and fight this and use the political pressures that are happening. There's a business opportunity to tap into this. It's not just Marriott. It could be any type of company where you allow these things to happen. Two-sided marketplaces must be branded. And I'm looking carefully in the industry for a software provider to provide this, a white label Airbnb SaaS platform. And it doesn't exist in the market yet. The third one, this is the most complex, and it requires the most investments, but the payoffs are the greatest. And this is when you get your marketplaces to build products. And we call this provide a platform. And a company provides an area for customers to actually start to build the next generation products. This isn't anything new. You've heard of a lot of startups that do this, but we want to think about the co-words, collaboration, such as co-ideate, like Quirkly allows people to submit ideas and new products can be designed. Or co-fund, like Kickstarter. Or co-build, like Etsy. Or co-market, or co-distribute, or co-sale, or co-revenue share, or co-IP share. This software exists in communities, but it's not connected to customers and corporations yet. In this radical model, it means you cannot tell the difference between a customer and an employee. They could be the very same person. And it means in this model, provide a platform, that the crowd becomes the company. And that's a radical shift in our space. We see a few small examples today, but it's still ripe for new business to emerge. One example is Nike allows customers to design their shoes, but it's only on the surface level, on code design on top of an existing platform. When I was in Denmark, I got a chance to visit Christiania. And Christiania is a free town. It's kind of an anarchist town. And they decreed that there should be no cars. Instead, they built their own bicycles that can transport goods. And then they started selling this inside of Copenhagen and then Denmark and now all around the world. That's an example of a community and a crowd already creating products, but it's not being harnessed. And they don't have the opportunity to tap into a distribution model or a trusted brand. So to put all of these things together, this is the collaborative economy value chain. And the opportunity is to connect startups, corporations, and people tapping into these three models: company as a service, motivate a marketplace, and provide a platform. Now, why would you do this? Well, we see there's four benefits to this ecosystem, to our industry. The first one is, for the corporations, you're going to be more efficient because the crowd is becoming part of your company. You can tap into them for distribution. You can tap into them for marketing and even selling your products. Number two, instead of just selling products on a periodic basis, you can be in a deep relationship with them, selling on subscription, or even activating them to be part of your company and your development of your products. The third one is, you're adding value between the relationships between customers. And this is something companies have never really understood, is how to create value between customers. And of course, the opportunity is to extract some of that value. And the fourth one, my message to the market is, no one's doing this yet. Whoever goes now, startups or corporations, have first market mover opportunity. This is an open market. So to tie all these things together, the value chain, the opportunity for corporations to help illustrate this is to tap into new transactions that are happening all around the ecosystem. And you can see these blips happening. What's that 20%? When I surveyed the startups, I found that a majority of them were taking 20% cut, typically in a two-sided marketplace. They're taking 20% cut. And the message that I have here is that corporations can expand the number of transactions that they would have lost and take 20% from all of these ecosystem transactions. And that's why we call it the collaborative economy. So what happened to Fred? Well, King Fred is a hero. Not only did he stop unneeded bloodshed, he gave the people what they wanted. In fact, he even stayed in the palace. And I'm happy to report that his family still lives in the palace today. They're seen as a trusted icon. In fact, they're the second oldest monarchy in the world and revered for their nation and working with the people. Now, the interesting thing that King Frederick did is he let go of his throne to gain the kingdom. And corporations, if you want to be part of the collaborative economy, it means you have to let go of your company in order to gain the market. The final question that I leave you with is, what side of history will you be on? Thank you so much, and I hope you join the collaborative economy. I'm Jeremiah. Thank you.